take some classes, you can shoot for you're good now, but if you take the classes with me, you can take pictures for a newspaper and for a yearbook. I went to University of Miami. And I said, no, I had 2 or 3 jobs. I didn't have time for that. He says, just take a class. So I took the class, did very, very well at it. I would miss a lot of classes, but I would do the homework really well. But my professor was like, look, we need you in the class. And I think at first he thought that I thought I was so good that he didn't have to show up to class. But I was too embarrassed to tell him that I couldn't afford to go to class because I had to work to pay for the books.
Welcome to Latinx in Power, a podcast hosted by Thaisa Fernandes.
Welcome to Latinx in Power. Today we are talking with Carl-Phillipe Juste. Carl is a photojournalist and an ArtSpace operator with more than 30 years of experience, co-founder and owner of Iris PhotoCollective, IPC Visual Lab, IPC ArtSpace, and IPC ArtStage. Carl specializes in video storytelling, focusing on human interest, entertainment, science, politics, sports, and documentary photography. I'm very excited to be talking with you. I really like your work. So welcome to the Latinx in Power.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. Glad to be here.
In this episode, we'll discuss the artistic journey of Carl. He'll talk more about his approach to visual storytelling, balancing photojournalist integrity with his unique perspective or as an artist of color. I'm very, very excited with this conversation. And one thing that I wanted to ask you first, how do you feel connected with Latin American culture? And do you consider yourself a Latino? How is this process for you?
Well, I mean, if you consider French and Spanish to be Latin languages, then I am Latin. I'm a Francophone. My mother was born in Cuba, so she was fluent in Spanish. So is my father. And my sister speaks Spanish. But, we share a common culture. And so I could navigate and go back and forth between being Caribbean and being Latin. It's the possibility of being both at the same time is not something that's impossible. So I consider myself each foot in a different place, but it's part of who I am as my identity because I cannot totally divorce myself from my mother who was Cuban. So I consider myself both a Latin and a Francophone.
That's incredible. I love that. And for me, it's very inspiring and very interesting because I understand that Latin America is huge. We are 34 countries, many different languages. Culturally, we are very similar, very, very different. And at the same time, they say the term is self-identified. So I'm always asking people because I interview some people who don't identify themselves as Latinos and some people who identify. And it's so interesting. So you have always those languages, Spanish and French. That's so cool. So you always spoke French and Spanish at the same time or mostly French?
Well, I speak mostly French and Creole, but as a practice, the language I feel most comfortable in is English, of course. But I understand Spanish. I don't speak Spanish fluently, but living in Miami, you cannot avoid it. My parents, however, were fluent in both Spanish, French, and Creole and English. The traditions, my mother would cook, the way she cooked, it looked very similar to the food I would eat in my Cuban friends' houses. The traditions that we would have, eating grapes on New Year's Eve, midnight mass, all this stuff looked familiar to me. So, like I said, I can't really divorce myself, the influence of Spanish or Spanish culture, because I was pretty much raised in it. The music that played in our house, Julio Iglesias, we had Cachao, we had a lot of Latin, Afro-Cuban music in my house. So it's something I don't think I own. I think it's something that was just embedded in my genetics. So I embrace it. And, I'm also a person of color. I'm of African descent. So I celebrate that too. But, these days, everybody's trying to fit themselves in the box. And I think now it's much easier to be more fluid. You could be a lot of things at the same time. It's not necessarily important to be one or the other, as long as what you consider yourself is truthful to you and how you conduct and how you live your life. Because I like arroz con pollo and I like chuletas, but I also like grillo. I also like legume. So it's all from the same source. The soul, I can recognize the soul in both French and actually in both French and in Spanish, because it all is derived from Africa. That's the space that I really embrace.
I love that. And you mentioned something very interesting. I think it's interesting because I don't know, maybe this happens a lot in US, but other places too. There's this need to fix, like to be in a box, like Latino box and whatever box, and you need to be part of that. And at the same time, it's interesting because Latin America, we are 34 countries, and it's like, oh, I might not identify with this box. But maybe a long time ago, it made sense to be part of the box because, for example, for me, when I moved to the US almost 10 years ago, I really wanted to be part of the community. And I'm from Brazil. I consider myself a Latina. So the Latinx community was very, very important to me. And it's interesting how different people are talking about different things now. They have this approach that you mentioned, being more fluid, maybe being part of like different groups. And it's interesting, this shift as well. So I really like that. And I really like that you mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, there's some fluidity in our identity, not only in terms of now we can accept, we don't have to choose. It doesn't have to be 50-50 to be part of you, you know? This country is fixated on race because it was founded on race. It was built on race. Race became so much more important in this country, in the new world, because it served a purpose. You could dehumanize people. You could use them like cattle. You could treat them as second-tier citizens. It was justification for a lot of evil. Now, I think a lot of people, especially immigrants, don't longer want to hide in the shadows. They don't want the title of just being a refugee. Yes, they're looking for refuge. They don't want the title of just being an immigrant because we could be all those things and still retain our humanity. And that's what my parents pretty much taught me, that, you know, it's really important to meet people where they're at, you know, not what you want them to be, but what they tell you they are. This is how I try to treat people. When I travel, I've been to Brazil, I've been all over the world, and I try to find a little bit of myself in everywhere I go. In order to do that, I can't keep myself in a box because my humanity flows, you know, over the edge. It flows over the banks and it falls into something that might be a little bit more foreign to people, but I have to find myself in this new place that I'm in. And you know, when you live in the United States, it's a very diverse country, but, you know, the power structure is usually focused on a certain group. And sometimes you're the only person that speaks Portuguese in a room. And you're in that room, and there's this sense of social isolation. And I think as immigrants, we have learned how to climb over that wall because we need to get to the other side. You know, so important to be part of something that's collective. And I think that's what makes this country great, this immigrant population. Just like you have in Brazil, you have Japanese, you have people from Europe, you have African, you have indigenous, and you have this blend, this beautiful coffee that could be as rich and dark and that could be as light as milk, but it still tastes so well. I go to Brazil and you see the people and you see all the shades and you see all the practices and you see this idea that, you know, out of many, there's strength in one. There's a strong sense of identity and pride. And I think when you have diversity, it doesn't hinder one's identity. It actually strengthens it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love everything you were saying. And I love your parents already. Very inspiring.
Oh, yeah, they are. I mean, my office is named after them. And they named the street after my mother and father because they were very active and they were a dominant force in the immigrant community because my parents were bicultural, tricultural in certain aspects. They could read in 3 different languages, actually 4 different languages, so quadcultural. They were able to kind of navigate different communities, different spaces. You know, my father as a kid, he always used to take me to places. My parents, I would be the only person dark-skinned there, the only black person. And at first it used to bother me. And my dad said, you know, one day he pulled me aside. He said, why you look so bothered? Why you look so uncomfortable? And I said, you know, every time we go somewhere, we're in Rockefeller Center. Black person, for miles, I don't see anybody that looks like me. He says, look, we go out all the time. We go to parties and there's a lot of people that look like you. We go to Haitian parties. We go to Puerto Rican parties. We go to Dominican parties. Everybody looks like you. But you have to understand that you don't live in a world that is solely about you. You have to know how to engage with things that may seem foreign. You have to attract something that's similar, something even in a different place. He says, I never want to see your head down. I never want to see you feeling ashamed because your crown has been paid for. And you need to wear that crown well. Because this is why I brought you this country. Because if I would left you in Haiti, you'd probably be dead. And we came here for freedom. We came here to be able to speak our mind. Though we don't have the full liberty that we deserve, at least here we can fight. So my parents were really involved in fighting for equity and beyond equality. I don't think we all are equal. I think we all are equitable. We all have same value. Our equality comes in different shapes and expressed different ways, but we all should be equitable. That means my value is as important as yours. You know, you have red hair, I may have black hair, you may have straight hair, I may have dreads, but our hairs are still valuable. And I think that's how they raised me. They raised me as a person who understands that the world is, you know, every day you get up is a miracle. I tell people all the time, you know, I feel lucky every day. I get a second chance to do better on what I've done and to correct my mistakes every day. Get up in the morning, this is my second chance. I try not to have bad days. I have a few of them my whole life, but even those days I found some sense of gratitude.
That's awesome. And I want to ask you, how did your journey as a photojournalist begin? Can you tell us how did everything started?
Well, I had a passion for visual communication. I was always looking at images. I would be transfixed by album covers. When I listened to music, I could visualize it. When I was in high school, my brother-in-law had a camera and I borrowed it and I started making images. And I would rush back then, you rush, take it to the, corner drugstore, get it processed and, spend every little money I had just to see my images. And then I went to college, an engineer major. One day, just by a fluke, I'm sitting, and waiting for another class. And this guy sits next to me. He sees me looking at my pictures. I took some pictures, some friends. He goes, "Man, you're really good." I said, "I'm okay." He said, "No, you're really good." He said, "Would you like to, you should take some classes." I'm like, "Nah." He said, "If you take some classes, you can shoot for you're good now, but if you take the classes with me, you can take pictures for our newspaper and for our yearbook." I went to University of Miami. And I said, no, I had 2 or 3 jobs. I didn't have time for that. He says, "Just take a class." So I took the class, did very, very well at it. I would miss a lot of classes, but I would do the homework really well. But my professor was like, "Look, we need you in the class." And I think at first he thought that I thought I was so good that I didn't have to show up to class. But I was too embarrassed to tell him that I couldn't afford to go to class because I had to work to pay for the books sometimes. So sometimes I would miss class because I had a second job and third job, like I said. Then I just found out, I never looked at my watch. When I was studying photography or when I was out making images, or if I was in the lab, or if I was talking about the process of creating images, I would never get bored. It was like having the best conversation with the most attractive person you ever met. The conversation never died. Though it was a visual conversation that took me to over 30 countries and several, tours, multiple civil disturbances, earthquakes, hurricanes, campaigns, Super Bowls. Those things, the places didn't matter to me as much as what the conversations that I was able to capture through photography. That to me was more important to me. So I didn't actually choose it. It chose me. And I built my whole existence, not my whole existence, my whole expression came from the visual language because I understood I'm also a psychology major. So I could see a lot of the stuff that I was learning in psychology be interpreted in my imagery. So I love to travel. I love to meet people. I love to listen to people, I love to talk to people. The camera was my passport. It opened a lot of doors for me, doors that people I never would have met if I had chosen a different, course of life. From the street hustler to the guy who's begging for money on the corner to the president of the United States or president of a country. I never saw a difference between either one of them.
It's fascinating how this one person changed your entire life.
Yeah, he said something that my ears needed to hear, and I just pivoted. Yeah. Funny thing is, he didn't take photography no more. He went to be a fireman.
Really?
Yeah, I joke with him all the time. We're still great friends.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. I love that. I was going to ask you, is still talk to them. That's incredible.
Oh, yeah. We're great friends. We've been friends for over 40 years now.
Incredible. And how do you approach visual storytelling, particularly when focusing on human interest stories and documentary photography?
My approach has always been to extract the familiar as something that looks different. So extract the familiar from the foreign and make the foreign seem familiar. I'm always trying to see the greatest common ground that we share, because pain in Paris is the same pain in Persia. When someone cries or laughs, if you close your eyes, it sounds the same. It really does. And I think the visual language really plays really well to those cues. You look at a picture of somebody's mad, the last thing you ask yourself, what languages he speaks? You just know it. He's angry. The visual language it's our first language, it's our primary language. And we all become bilingual because we learn visual language and then we learn the language that we speak and write. But I think what makes art connects, what makes people be moved by, let's say, 1812 Orchard by Tchaikovsky, or be moved by Musique Racine, or be moved by Bossa Nova, is that international visual language. Because when we hear music or when we read a book or when we see something, when we go to cinema, there is something that we connect with that's beyond these fake boundaries that we have drawn for ourselves to make us feel comfortable, these boxes which we have created. What allows me to do my work is to tap into that, is to tap into this innate conversation, which we all share. Our humanity expresses itself very similar. And I see that in a lot of places I go. I don't speak the language, but I hear things and my ears will kind of signal my eyes where to look. I just move towards it. If I hear beautiful music coming out of the window or out of the door, I'm almost sure someone's either going to be dancing or listening. They're going to be doing something that I would do. So I want to capture that. Yeah, look for that common ground. That's what draws me. And photography is the only thing that I can do that'll make people stop and pause. They don't even know my name. My name does not make people stop. But when I make an image, I can't begin to tell you how many things people see in that image. And that brings me a lot of joy.
That's incredible. And how do you balance preserving the integrity of photojournalists while expressing your unique perspective and as an artist of color? How do you balance those two things?
Well, first of all, I don't think I'm invisible. I'm just irrelevant. I don't think that I'm a fly on the wall. I look at things through various different lenses, physical and cultural lenses. And I look at things maybe slightly different. You could have two people look at the same event and pull two different pictures. I think that's the magic of photojournalism. It's not about the product. The art is not in the product. The art is in the process. So I don't go in and say, well, I won't have no effect. Yes, I do have an effect. I'm a Black man with dreadlocks in the middle of Estonia. You don't think people notice me when I'm picking up my camera and taking pictures? Of course they notice me. What I try to do is become irrelevant to the point that they don't care that I'm there, or to trust me so much that they have so much trust in my presence that I'm no longer a concern. And I talk to people. Great pictures come through the ears because all my images do is retell a story. I don't tell people stories. I retell them. So with that approach, it's a little bit more difficult because I'm not trying to what they call snatch and grab. You see something, you shoot it, and then you grab it. I'm not really interested in that. I want to know why. I want to know who. I want to know when. I want to know what happened before that, what's going to happen after. And a frame, a picture that captures a moment, a really good one, it tells you a lot about the moment that might have existed before it, and it places questions of what may happen after it. That frame is always expanding. That's what makes it magical. It's visual alchemy. I think sometimes what we do as photojournalists is visual improvisation. You drop us in somewhere that's dark. We don't have a flash. And all we have is the light of a street. And somehow we find the light. And we convey a mood. We convey a sense of a space. We use shadows. We use highlights. We use all these elements to retell a story, a story that is not imaginative. A story is based on truth, but is seeing the unseen and bringing it to life. That is the beautiful struggle.
See the unseen. I'm taking a lot of notes. Just so interesting, everything you're saying. I love when you said about great pictures come from the ears. That's so incredible. Like amazing. At
least for me, because I hear it. I hear a woman crying. I'm somewhere, or someone yelling, and I run towards it. I hear fire hydrants, firefighters. You hear the sirens going off. You run towards it. Where most people run away, I run towards it.
You hear the small shaking of the ground, and you hear something crash. You run towards it, or you hear someone giggling. If you do your job right, you could hear a smile as well as hear it. I mean, you can see it as well as you can hear it as well as see it. So it automatically develops in different forms. Some of the best pictures I love, it's not that it puts me in a place, it transports me into a time. Yeah, that's important too. But it's almost a time. It's almost a three-dimensional presence. Great pictures do that to you. They put you inside that frame. It gives you the ability to come in and to come out. And at the same time, these images challenges your values.
It's interesting how it can relate to music too, because music can make you feel a lot of different things and transport you to a different time. Carl, what role do you believe art and photography play in fostering understanding and empathy among diverse communities?
I think art is the gateway to understanding. Without art, I think would be a much violent world. I think would be a more primitive world. I think art allows us to pause and to reflect and to reconnect not only with each other, but with ourselves. I find art to be as crucial as breathing. I don't see it as an art extracurricular activity. It's not something you do on the side. It's something that you do daily, like getting up and brushing your teeth and washing your clothes. It is part of your existence, and if you really appreciate it, art can teach you how to live. It is a connector. It could be as violent as a gust of wind, a hurricane force wind, and it could be as profound as the relief of a trade wind on a hot day. It could be two things at the same time, and it could be neither. It is, I think, the greatest gift the divine has given us. I think art is divinity.
Two things at the same time, and it could be neither. That's incredible. Do you have any future projects that you want to share with us, or any initiatives that you're excited about?
Oh, yeah. I have a book coming out next year called Havana, Haiti. It's about Haiti and Cuba and what they have, so much things they have in common, shared history, shared impact, and the differences that we have, the differences that sometimes are exaggerated or manipulated to cause an hierarchy. I have that. I just finished a movie. I was in an HBO documentary called Endangered. If anybody there has access to HBO Max, it's on HBO Max. It's called Endangered. It's by Loki Films. Two amazing direct producers. It's up for an Emmy Award this year. It's not just me, it's 3 other artists. As a matter of fact, it features an artist from Brazil. A writer from Brazil, a journalist. It features a photographer from Mexico. And it features myself from Miami. And it features a writer who works for the British paper. And it follows all 4 of us during 2020. And it seems like one long day. It's a really good film. I encourage anyone who wants to see art in terms of documentary form, in terms of a short film. It's not a short film, an hour and 10 minutes. I would encourage y'all to see it. It's the power of storytelling. And I'm working on a big project to develop an institute with concentration in Latin America and the Caribbean that will be launched officially in 2025. I can't say too much about it, but it's going to be something amazing. And, I have several shows. I have a show coming up in September called A Call to the Ancestors, and talks about transition from this existence on Earth to whatever comes after this. It looks at race. It looks at social justice. It looks at traditions. It looks at cultural connections and identity. And it looks at all these things from the Native American experience to African American experience to Haitian experience and to Latinx experience. And it's a conversation that I've always been interested in engaging. And then I have my ArtSpace. We have a show coming up during Basel called Defiance, and it's about the summer of 2020, which I call the summer of protests. That exhibition I'll start working on. I've been working on it for the last year and a half, but now I will start editing and curating the show for Basel. And who knows what's next? I always have something to do. When you're an artist, you can't stay still. Sometimes you could pause. Sometimes you could linger, but you never stand still. You're always trying to move the conversation And it's not always bad things. It's good things. I believe that we should celebrate the beautiful things in our lives, the sense of Black joy. And when I say the word Black and all its derivatives, I think art should be and is, for the most part, it is the way that we connect. It is the first internet. It's where we engage. It is the first chat room. It's the first emoji. It's a lot of things. And I encourage everyone to see art not as something that you do on the side, but as something that you feel every day. If it's reading one page from a book, if it's putting on jazz in the morning or putting on soft rock, and take 5 minutes of every day. Just give yourself 5 minutes. Start with 5 minutes and be still with creativity. And you will find that 5 minutes will turn into an hour. That hour will turn into 3 hours, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 months. And next thing you know, it has taken over your life. And I think we could be a better people because of it. Art is our savior. It's divine.
Incredible. Thank you so much for your time. We are getting to the end of this episode. I really enjoyed everything you said. And I'm going to be following you and seeing the book, the film, like everything. I'm so excited and really happy for you.
Well, don't be happy for me. Let's be happy for us.
Yes. Yes.
As I am happy for you that you have this podcast, I'm happy for us that you have this podcast. Because now we're no longer separated. I've walked through your door, and now you've walked through mine. So now we share a room together. We share a space together. So let's continue growing the space. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm at IPC ArtSpace. If you want to follow me, and I'm also at CPJs here on Instagram. I'm not much on Facebook, but I'm on LinkedIn. But I'm always doing something. And if you're in Miami, you find yourself in Little Haiti, Google my name, Google IPC ArtSpace, find my address. If you come on a Friday afternoon or on a Saturday afternoon, ring my bell and I'll open my door. I can promise you that. If I'm here and that bell rings, I always open the door.
That's incredible. I love it. I really love your conversation, your generosity. Thank you so much.